Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. We record this at around 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is episode 634. I've got a great panel. I've got a great set of stories. We've got some, like last week, we got a great selection of WordPress stories and tech stories. Got a great panel, a full panel. I'm looking forward to the show. It should be great. Before we go into the show, I've got a quick advert for our major sponsor. We'll be back in a few seconds. We're coming back. You just heard from my great sponsor. For some reason, it makes Spencer laugh. I don't know why, but there we go.
I listen to the show after it's produced, and then when you do that little stuff, I always laugh because I know, like, Bill Conrad or whoever the guy is going to come in and like say, and now here's your sponsor.
It's actually in my voice. This.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be in my. Yeah, I've done it in my voice. So it's even worse, isn't it, Spencer? So
I know how they make the soup, so now like I laugh every time when you do that.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Let's start with ladies. Let's not be rude. Let's start with Stephanie. Stephanie, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the tribe?
Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Hudson with Focus WP. You can find me at focuswp.co.
And my friend Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sally Getch, rhymes with sketch, not remotely focused, but I am the WP fangirl and organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
That's great. Got my friend Vito. Vito, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Vito. I'm the founder of Atarim and co-founder of Bertha.ai with Andrew here. And you can find me on Twitter, Vito Peleg.
That's great. I've got my friend Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Spencer Foreman rhymes with doorman from launchflows.com.
We should all rhyme our names.
I've got my great friend John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
John Locke rhymes with rock.
Oh, yeah. True. And I've got my friend, but he's ill today. But he's a workaholic. He's been off on holiday. He's come back though. I've got Andrew Palmer. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Palmer, and I'm not very well, but there you go. But I missed you guys, so I need to be here, and you can find me at bertha.ai, and this is andrewpalmer.com.
That's great. There is only one Andrew Palmer. So let's go straight into the stories. WooCommerce marks 10-year anniversary for forking Jigo Shop. So Spencer, what did you think of this one?
This is like one of those, it's like D-Day. You know, we have a memorial every 10 years, but this was really a day I remember well. At the time, Adi was running it, about 80 was running it, and it was sort of like a small company of a few South African fellas, and they were doing some really remarkable things. And it was almost more like invading another country kind of a thing, because it was such a bold move at the time that it got everybody riled up. And it really was interesting because I can't remember if it was before or after, but it sort of was concurrent with them changing their lifetime subscription to their theme membership, and a lot of other things that we take for granted today came out of this company, this very bold
move. I think the the annual membership blah blah started a year or two later, but you're right, it's hard to put it all into context, but I don't think the membership stuff started until after they had created Sensei, which was a few years on.
But the 80, I always say it badly, but I feel like John was Adi, or I think it's 80 PNR. So he was very progressive. I think he self-describes, because I've spoken to him about this before, he self-describes that he didn't know what he was doing at the time, but they stumbled into this like early days. WooCommerce, or the company that he founded, was the first that really succeeded in monetizing something for the WordPress community. I think that's fair to say. And the moves that they made were really controversial because we were all sitting around a campfire telling stories, smoking pot, eating food that we brought from the supermarket. And then here comes this group of guys that everybody uses their product and loves it. which was revolutionary because they also came up with the idea of these themes that did all these amazing things built in. But then to have the big cojones to come in and literally steal the team. They paid for him. They left voluntarily, but they left the founders of Jigo Shop with their cup out. And I think that was the lesson that set the stage for everyone else that, wow, there's really some action going on in WordPress.
So what do you reckon, Stephanie?
Yeah, they stole their team, but did they, this is a good lesson for us as business owners. If you're going to build something, make sure your devs are invested in it. Make sure they're compensated and they have ownership and things like that. If you treat your team like a throwaway commodity, somebody could come in and scoop them up. So, that's a hindsight 2020 situation for them, I'm sure, but that's sort of how it looks from that hindsight.
I want to add one thing too, because of what Stephanie just said, which is, you're right on par. I don't think it's fair to say that they needed the developers. I think they stole the code, demonstrating that you could fork anything, which is something even to this day I keep banging the drum about if WordPress doesn't stop being naughty, then the Wix guy will just fork WordPress.
Can I just say, do you think you should use that word stolen? Because they didn't steal anything. They had every legal right to do what they did.
100% right. It's not stolen because that's the Achilles heel of open source.
Yep.
It is that it started open, it remains open, and it has to forever be open. So getting to my example, there is nothing that stops a large-scale funded company like a Wix to go ahead and just say, oh, fork WordPress, the main software. And
is anybody else immature enough to laugh every time somebody says that? Fork WordPress.
You can fork it.
Fork it. Say it in an Irish accent.
Fork you and the horse you rode in on.
Exactly.
What stopped Salesforce from why did Salesforce buy Slack then? Because
nothing.
They're massive and they could have spent less than whatever they paid for, $1 billion or whatever, and develop their own Slack. Why did they buy an open source?
They'd already tried that, and apparently
it
wasn't successful. I'm sorry, is my mic too hot?
Wow, yeah, I've got headphones on. Sorry.
Sorry, I'll back off a little. I don't want to blast anyone's ears off.
Hold on, Sally, I'll put you on an adjusted mic. But the point is true that if you think about it, a lot of the problems that come from this on the larger scale would be you'd have to have the agreement of the players. So getting to Stephanie's example, they made it financially feasible for the developers of the Jigo Shop to go along with the forking because they saw the greater opportunity with the well-invested, popular, branded, WooCommerce, I don't know what they called themselves. Woo Themes. They called themselves Woo Themes at the time. What Woo Themes was doing was I'm jumping on that rock star bandwagon because you guys are just gonna continue to run a sweatshop over here. And I think that's the lesson learned, that if a Salesforce or Wix or somebody wanted to come in, if they came in advance, I'm laying the roadmap here, and said, we got a $10 million budget this year for hiring talent from the WordPress pool, and everybody's gonna be making $500,000 to start as a lead developer, I think they would have to block people at the doorways from jumping over from automatic. That's the point, is nobody has done that. And maybe the reason is because listen, with Salesforce, Mark Benioff doesn't have to change his code, working or not. He's got all the enterprise. And the other companies have their own hands full with their own code, like Infusionsoft Keep and so forth. But the Wix guy, I keep banging, he's got a perfect opportunity because they've already make more money, greater capitalization, and it's a parallel market. They make WordPress into their developer thing, pay all the people prime dollar, fork the code, call it a day.
Right, fair. So Vito, I actually see I actually see where Spencer's coming, but I actually think it's going to be Alameda that makes this play, actually. Personally, myself, I might be totally wrong, but I actually think this is what Alameda plans to do. What do you reckon, Vito?
I don't know what they're planning. I think it might be a good idea, though, for them to do this. When it comes to forking WordPress as a whole, right?
Yeah.
I think that might be a good idea. Just drop Gutenberg and make it just use the infrastructure of WordPress, the admin files, without the admin dashboard. I think that would be a really good idea for them. But
I'm sorry to interrupt, Vito, but I actually think they got to do this in a way.
They did do this in a way. So they have their like cloud-based platform that is like Elementor Cloud that is based on WordPress essentially, and it's kind of like WordPress.com, only that it's powered by Elementor instead of Gutenberg, which I think is it's a great move for them because they have the tool to do this. The system that they have is proficient enough without all of the other WordPress stuff. So for basic usage, let's say for marketing agencies and stuff like that, I think that's more than enough for some people, especially if you're looking at this compared to Squarespace or Wix or some of the other cloud-based solutions that are out there. That being said, compared to going back to this story, I actually started with Gigoshop myself, so I had a few websites on this platform before it became WooCommerce, and I loved it. I thought it was great back then, and then I remember that WooCommerce kind of came into the game, but Gigoshop wasn't like a beast yet. Well, it wasn't. It never got to a place where it was as big as, let's say, Yoast or Elementor, to your example, Jonathan, or WordPress as a thing. So I think that they kind of saw an opportunity to take it to the next level. And there's another example out there from BodyBoss that took BodyPress, which was like a project that was, it was running, but it wasn't amazing. It was never like awesome. It was just like a good idea, poorly implemented.
I just want to comment on that last bit. I think you're being a little bit unfair. I understand why you're saying that, Vito, but you're being a little bit unfair because JJ put his heart into that. And
sorry, I don't know who was behind this.
No, he was.
I don't mean
just
to offend anyone.
And he wanted to build it out a lot more, but he's got a family, and
right.
he looked for sponsorship and for major support from Automatic and other. And to be quite truthful, I don't want to talk for him, Vito, because he can talk for himself, and he's a friend of the show. But he just didn't get the support, Vito. So
that's fine, and that's exactly my point. Like Gigoshop had a good base, the same way that BodyPress was an amazing idea, but it was never there. It never got to a place where you could confidently use it in a strong environment. So a company that had the backing, that had already like a team behind them, the BodyBoss guys, they were doing projects on WordPress. They were a massive agency before they got into the product game. And they were using BodyPress, and so it made sense for them to kind of go down this route. The same way I think that Woo Themes, it wasn't a company that started with the concept of let's fork and start a company. They were already doing stuff, and then they saw potential with something that was out there and how they can take it to the next level. And this is I would even say that this is kind of it's one of the cool things about WordPress. But as a product maker, it's one of the scariest things also. Because you do invest, like you're talking about the JJ, and I'm sure that the Gigoshop guys as well, you do invest hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into building those products, and then someone can just come in and, continue where you left off.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is in the back of every developer's mind. But if you think of it from the standpoint of I wonder what would happen if somebody did that. Have you guys ever played that game? Because I do that all the time. I'd be like, what? Why doesn't somebody just fork launch flows? Not that launch flows is anything big, but I'm saying like, just take the code and run with it, like build it into something else. And I think it's interesting because if you're an antagonistic person like me, that becomes political capital for your own marketing. In other words, like, yeah, I hope you do fork my thing, because then it comes down to now we both have the same sword and we're having a sword fight. Who can do better with the sword versus the software is so magical. but it's not yet happened. Do you know? There's not really been one instance I can think of. Maybe you guys know otherwise of anybody who's recently forked a popular plugin and gotten
Buddy
away with it.
Boss.
Buddy Boss isn't really a
I
fork
like to bring
because that was
Rank math.
rank
It's
math.
it's proper
It's ranked-
fork. It's like it's defined as a fork.
No, but like I know Mike and what he did with that. It was sort of like, I'm not saying like Boone and JJ said you can't do it, but it was sort of like Boone and JJ were like, we can't keep up with this thing. And they were using extensively. So he had capital to do it. What happened with rank math? Rank math was a fork of something else?
Yoast.
Yoast, maybe.
I'm
But it's a
sorry,
good
no,
point,
it was.
John. It's a good point because
I've got a thing because this happened to me yesterday. Divi came out with a thing called Divi Conditions, and it's basically exactly the same as a plugin that I've got, which
is
is
the
Divi
code or
Display
the
Logic.
marketing or the web page or what?
Yeah, it's just called Divi Conditions, and they're using the same functionality. Not as many functions as Divi Display Logic, I have to say, but I actually commented to Nick, not actually unique, but I'll let you have that one for free. And he came back and said, we'll never be able to keep up with third-party developers. But also another guy, I had Divi Layout Injector. That's Sean and I developed that 4 years ago, and somebody's actually got that in their package. And they've called it Divi Layout Injector. So, the danger of having plugins being forked, we did Woo Layout Injector, and guess what? Divi now have 80% of the functionality of Woo Layout Injector in Divi. So when you're an innovator, which Sean was, and we would 80% of his plugins were my idea as well. So we worked together to develop these plugins. There is a danger that, the theme makers, Divi sort of Elementor DB form is now in Elementor Pro. It now keeps a record of your forms. So there's 50,000 downloads of that. So it's quite a big plugin. And
Yes, well, I don't.
I'd like to bring John in actually, Sally. So John,
go ahead.
So John, what do you reckon about this?
Well, I mean, 10 years is a long time, but it's not a long time. And this, what was that? That would have been 2011. So, that's like one of the early like WP dramas. But it sounds like Woo wasn't giving Mike Jolly and then the other person who jumped over enough money. I think from what it sounds like in the old articles that they're referencing on the Internet Archive, that WooCommerce just made it, or Woo Themes at the time just made a better offer.
Yeah.
And now it's all rolled into automatic.
Man, they got tremendous bad flack from the community, and there were some other things they did later on which I think they deserved the flack.
But
that particular thing, I think that Spencer put it quite clearly, and he's totally correct. They had every right to fork it, didn't they?
Everyone's got every right to fork anything that goes into WordPress because it has to be GPL. But the danger is from a smaller developer that spends a few $1,000s on doing something. There are going to be other WooCommerces out there that are going to say, well, you know what, I really like that, I'm going to do it. And they've got a bigger marketing budget, they've got a bigger team.
Yeah, but
they can
as
really,
you know,
really
Andrew, as you know, yes, legally they can do it, but they would be wise to try if they want to do that. And I think, in fairness to Woo Themes at the time, my understanding is that they were in negotiation. They tried to come to some business deal, blah, blah, blah. But they were, because I interviewed both of the founders on my show, and they said they did try and come to accommodation. But, legally, Spencer is right. But you would be wise, in my opinion, if you really want to fork something, and to speak to that small developer and offer some compensation, or bring them on board, or try and come to some arrangement. Would you agree, Andrew?
I definitely agree. But we had the situation with Caldera Forms, didn't we? A great form plugin being bought by Ninja Forms, which was great. That there was obviously some financial compensation on there, and Josh had a whole year of employment and stuff like that. And now Caldera Forms doesn't exist. And that's the key, is that, is Caldera better than Ninja Forms? Is Ninja Forms better than Caldera? You don't know, but some people just preferred Caldera Forms. And you've got the third-party developers that specifically develop stuff for Caldera Forms. So they've now lost their investment in both time and money. So we've got to be careful about forking stuff, and we've got to be careful about getting stuff in. And I know that Mike Jolly, British guy, English guy, and I've spoken to him a few times years and years ago, and he's a lovely man, really lovely man. WP Jobs is now part of Automatic, as far as I understand. I think that's been taken, or somebody's bought it, because he and it was a great little plug-in I used it loads of times. But these are talented individuals that took an idea that wasn't expanded upon, and they have massively expanded upon it, did some deals, trod on a few memberships, because I had a lifetime membership, and they said, well, we'll grandfather you in for a couple of years or whatever, and then sold it for $20 million or so, and now it's part of Automatic, and it's part of Core. It's Jetpack. It's completely part of the WordPress core. So what do you get from that? You say, well, okay, well, I'm proud of that, and I built that, and but did I get the financial compensation that I deserved? The answer is probably no.
No. Well, then we're going to go for our break. You'll be able to hear some of our great sponsors. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back, folks. And by the way, if you want to support the show, sign up for the WP-Tonic newsletter, where I produce a video where I comment on the stories with my own point of view, which you'll find very entertaining. And Andrew remarks about my video and says what an idiot I am. You can do that by signing up at the WP-Tonic website. There's banners all over the website where you can sign up for the newsletter. Plus, you will have some great deals on that page that are only offered to the WP-Tonic tribe. So let's go into, we only did one story, but we got bonus. Now let's go on to story 2. Inside Awesome Motive's self-perpetuating marketing machine. Who shall I start? Stephanie, what did you think of this one, Stephanie?
Not much. I mean, they bought a bunch of things and they market them all separately, and they cross promote them. I don't know why that's such a revolutionary concept. I mean, it doesn't seem like. I mean, it seems like obviously,
Well, he's made a lot.
Syed
of money.
is a pretty smart dude.
Well, yes, it's not a revolutionary concept, but it's not that common in the WordPress ecosystem.
He's a smart dude.
They've taken a tried and true kind of marketing approach and applied it successfully. And of course, the definition of a network effect is that every addition to the network builds the whole network.
Yeah. So, Vito, what did you think of it?
So I think that there is a really interesting approach to what happened here with this company, because they didn't start off as a plugin company. They started off with what WordPress was known for at the beginning, which was making a blog about WordPress, and that allowed them to have the attention and the base for creating creating a platform that also sells and promotes plugins. I think it's a brilliant move, really, from that point of view. A lot of players in the space are trying to do the same thing from the opposite part, from the other part. Even the article that we just read about WooCommerce is sponsored by Automatic, who owns WooCommerce, or Torque owns by a WP Engine. So and again, in other industries, you see Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post, and it goes hand in hand. If you have the
did you have to swear on the podcast, Vito?
What did I say? Washington?
No, Bezos.
No, I'm kidding. But because really, the money goes to where the attention is. That's really the game in marketing. And if you already have the attention, then might as well monetize it in some way. And if you have the product, might as well get attention in some way. So that I think that is a really brilliant move from their point of view.
So, John, what did you think of this one, John?
Well, from an SEO perspective, this is what people do if they have enough, capital to leverage something like this, because each one of, not only are you buying the products, but you're buying the blog and the domain, which is all very powerful with SEO. And it does create a snowball effect when it comes to when these sites start linking to one another or referencing one another, and it all feeds into the mothership. This is very similar to what one of the big companies in the SEO space, WebFX, did a few years ago when they bought 6 Revisions, which was a very popular web design blog. And they basically took all that content, and instead of keeping it separate, they rolled it into their own site. But that in itself too is very powerful. So
right, thanks for that. So, Spencer, I put this to you, Spencer. There seems to be a convergence between media companies and software companies. To have a successful software business, you've got to become a bit of a media company. Media companies get into software, we've just seen it with the company that we're discussing. So there's that question. And is there anything else that's come on your radar that makes why this specific founder and company have been so successful?
Yeah. I'm going to be 55 this year, not 27 and a half the second time around. And the one thing I can say to myself in the mirror, if I had a time machine, is if I could go back to when the internet thing started, I woulda, coulda, shoulda seen that the success of the internet was being able to see where everything was going and stake out your land before everyone got there. And at 2 levels, I failed horribly compared to what I coulda, woulda, shoulda done. Number one was I had the opportunities back in the day when Network Solutions was the only game in town to buy a shit ton of domain names with 3 and 4 and 5 letters or characters in them. That alone would have put me on a yacht in the South Pacific right now. I did okay with a few things here and there, but I was, I bought my own names, my family names and stuff. But man, I could own everything under the sun, a noun, a verb, an adjective, if I had just taken some of the real estate money I had at the time and put it into domain names. The second thing is exactly where I feel Syed is a freaking genius. Is that I remember the day he started WP Beginner. I remember the early days and weeks and months of it. And he just saw the long game. He saw the long game of turning that into a gargantuan lead magnet for everything else that he's doing now. And there are other people who can try to catch up, but just like the real estate market, it's really, really hard in the game to catch up when everybody's in the game already. Now you'd have to go to another space and another domain and another kind of thing. But that's why they're going to win with this in some ways, because look at the traffic that comes in from WP Beginner. I mean, it's incomparable. And it started out organically. But he has a history, it seems. Like you said, he had that YouTube channel like List 25 and some other. He seems to be one of those people that is really well aligned with his natural talents, his personality, his likability, and seeing the long game. And that's it. That's what
Did he, I might be totally wrong here, but did he not really just copy what WP Candy was doing and failed? I forgot who founded WP Candy. They were all guns, and then didn't the guy that was behind it, didn't he run out of money or energy and he just walked away from the whole thing?
Yeah, but it's different. Here's why. At the time when I started what I was doing in WordPress, there was a guy who was really talented, nice guy, Dinas Graveris, who had firstwebdesigner.com. Firstwebdesigner.com had Vito's typing 3.9 million visits. First Web Designer had up to 5 million visits a month.
Wow.
But it was an ad play. And Dynas, though very smart and businessman, early days, didn't have the vision to stay in WordPress and do the things, let's say, that Syed did. And that's what 1WD, my company, came out of. I collaborated with Dynas to say, look at the WordPress opportunities here, not just on advertising. Now, we made
he was a strange dude. Wasn't he the guy that had all the tattoos all over him?
No, he's a Latvian guy. He's a very clean guy. And he was friends with Tim Sulu, who runs Ahrefs now very successfully, that huge, company. But the point is, in the early days, certain people saw the long game, and Syed's vision seems to have come to fruition here because, yes, the ad market went away, but he started creating content that was different than WP Candy and different than even the papers that exist today, because WP Beginner was really evergreen. And I think it still is evergreen. And so when you talk about like, why would people keep coming back to it? It's a never ending supply of newbies can come along, and there's articles that are still relevant. And it wasn't about putting ad banners in place, and it wasn't about making tutorials that like lived in a vacuum. And I think that was where many people get tired, because if you were on version 1 of WordPress and then had to change all your content to version 2 and 3 and 4, and now we're on version 5, that is a full-time career. And unless you had the vision and the money to keep up with it, you said, screw this, I'm going to do something else. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the persons that I really admire, I have a kind of craze, but still I do admire him, that's managed to kind of muscle in later on, is Adam Paisley of WP Crafter. Done an amazing job of built from nowhere, building an enormous audience, hasn't he?
Yeah, he bloody works hard though, doesn't he? I mean, you can't. No matter what you think of these influencers, there's another one, Darren Wilson, who
am I influencer, Andrew? Am I influencer?
Well, yeah. Well, I think in our own little way, we're all influencers. I mean, maybe I need to take something out of Syed Balki's or besides playbook, because I've got 25 plugins. He's only got 15, right? So let's go for it. But I don't want to build 25 websites. Maybe John can help me. But the point is that these people actually.
Well, I presume that's why you've become my co-supporter of WP-Tonic. I would imagine that's what your plan is.
The point is that it takes a lot of hard work. Every single one of us, and I can point to every single one of us, have to work or have had to work silly hours. All day, all night, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, shit, I haven't done that or whatever, and dealing with obstreperous customers and people in support and even obstreperous hosts of podcasts. But the point is that you don't get where these guys have got and these girls have got. Let's not forget there's some very successful women in this business as well, without hard work. Yes, you're going to get some luck, and yes, you're going to have some foresight. But without the hard work and the chances they took, Balki's got a foundation now. He supports higher education, and maybe that's the way to go. Is that you think, right, I'm going to make some money. I'm going to take a portion of that. I'm going to put that towards education, and that's where you're going to get your crew from for the rest of the year. But what he's done and what other people have done, even Matt Mullenweg, right? Worked their socks off. Nick Roach, he left school at 15.
Did you have to do that? My blood pressure's going
he left
up
school
there.
at 15 and a half. He built Elegant Themes when he was 15 years old. These guys work hard.
I'm
Simple
getting
as
hot
that.
now. I'm getting hot and bothered. I'm going to move on to the next story, but I'm going to let Sally comment first on the next story. Number 3, developers hate WordPress and so should marketers. Sourced is the master WP newsletter. So, Sally, what do you think of this story? Do you hate WordPress? Do you?
Only occasionally. Well, let's see. I think they misspelled it in the headline footer. But yes, I mean, the thing is to make clear is this is branded content, which was published by a competitor to WordPress. It doesn't mean that nothing in it is true.
It's not biased, is it?
Oh, not a bit, right? Now, I mean, all of us who work with WordPress and who do love it, nevertheless are aware that it's got a lot of issues. It's got
It's a bit like me, really, isn't it?
well, yes, all of us have issues, and every alternative has issues. They're different issues. And WordPress is not, I give a presentation on this, the best tool for every job either. There are websites where WordPress is not necessarily a good choice. But this is, Storyblock, the leading, brought to you by Storyblock, the leading headless CMS that I'd never heard of. I don't know. Has anybody else heard of Storyblock? They might be. They might be a perfectly lovely platform, and they are probably a better solution for some people. But it's a reminder that you need to, look at the source behind your information.
I love you, Sally. I really. Sometimes you infuriate me, but in general, I just love your little comments. They're so English in some ways, aren't they? Oh, Stephanie, why you?
Her little Oh, you're so. I love your little comments, Sally. That was so condescending.
I didn't mean it to come
love you
across that
sometimes.
way. I didn't mean it to
Your
come
little
across
comments.
that way.
Uh-huh.
He's just a really bad man.
It's just Jonathan. I wind him up all the time, so
she's made a profession of it, Stephanie.
It's so easy to do.
No, it ain't. If it was easy, you still would be on this show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There we go. Spencer, what did you think of this little piece of kind of bit lot of propaganda, wasn't it?
Which part? I mean, I lost the thread there for a second. Hold on.
All right.
I think I started with the story. Did we move? I just lost you for a second because I got distracted. Sorry.
We're on Everybody Hates WordPress.
Oh,
apparently.
Yeah. All right. So what I read from this is I got distracted by somebody texted me. I'm being honest with you. The thing about this story is that it reflects something that I experience quite frequently, which is that there are those with whom you will have a conversation. They could be clients or they could be people working for clients. In fact, this week this occurred. Client needed our help with a WordPress-based solution. It was a WordPress site. The developers, quote unquote, that they were using were living in the last decade, doing things like they taught themselves to do back in 2007 instead of the modern way. I have to have a reality check with them about the fact that you have a hand-coded theme, no page builders, no modern tools, no nothing, and they're very defensive. And so this article to me represents that mindset of people who come in and see a WordPress site who aren't in the WordPress space immediately go to the, I don't know what this is, what it can do, so it must be bad, must be substandard, must be slow, must be limiting, must be whatever. And it's almost in the same way like that BMW car manufacturer model I always talk about. If you ask a modern car maker, they make none of their car parts, most of them. They just assemble them from various subcontractors. And that's because the modern world is built that way, and so is WordPress. And yet there are people who are protecting their territory. I'm sure somewhere are some guys with like reel-to-reel data storage devices that talk about working on a green screen is the only way to, build a company. So it's cute, but it's unfair, and it's depriving a lot of people, I think, of understanding what's really available when that, let's say, propaganda continues to be promoted.
So what do you reckon about this one, Vito?
It's not true.
It's not true.
It's just not true.
Well, it doesn't stop people from saying things, especially in 2021, does it? Everybody's got their view. It's not based on reality, though, is it?
It's not. So, like, there is, that's really the summary of this article. I was reading this and I was thinking about this from a marketer point of view, from a developer point of view. Just like people will have their opinions, and like Spence was saying, you just wanna up your own thing and bash the others. I can't say that we're not doing this sometimes as well. Bashing Wix here and there.
Well, that's justified, isn't it? Though.
I love Wix. I don't know what you're talking about. Wix, Shopify, Squarespace, brilliant platforms.
I don't know. I haven't been there in 10 years.
Can you honestly say that Wix is a fantastic platform, Andrew
Yeah,
Barber?
yeah.
It has lots of
Horses for
customers
courses.
that love it.
Horses for courses, mate. You know, no bias here.
Well, you are ill, so I let it go. So John, what did you think of this? Well, it's just a bit of propaganda, isn't it?
Well, you know, like there are a lot of developers that dislike
Yeah.
WordPress, but it's normally people that are working in Silicon Valley, or it's people who love to code with whatever the latest language is. But quite honestly, modern WordPress it requires you to know a lot of languages and to really keep up on development. It's not that easy. In defense of this article, I will say that it is true that WordPress is just now pivoting to a second phase, because it was built to be blogging software, and then everything else that evolved along the way, e-commerce functionality and everything else, was strapped onto that framework. But I don't get the hate for it. It's stable. You know, developing with PHP or even with JavaScript it's pretty mature. And, you know, there are a lot of companies that use the same technologies that are cutting edge, such as Facebook. So, yeah, I just don't get the hate.
It's that beautiful company, Facebook. There we go.
I know they're trash, but I'm just saying.
I'm not going
We
there.
cannot have React without Facebook.
I've promised certain panel members that I'm not going to rant during the podcast, so I'm keeping my word. So you don't set me off, John. Let's go on to story 4. How to learn stuff quickly. I want to put this to Spencer. I think this is a nice article, and I think it's the crux of a bigger thing, Spencer. I don't know if you agree with what I'm just going to put to you. One of the disappointments about online education and I think there were people that were expecting all this knowledge being available on the internet, that people being able to find facts instantaneously, and there was going to be an expansion of ability and knowledge, but it doesn't seem to have panned out. Wisdom is still a very rare thing, Spencer. Got any view? It just seems some people seem to be able to learn things, because I admire is that you seem to be able to learn things a lot quicker than me. I'm a plodder. I just plod along, you know, and if I can really concentrate, I get there, but I'm a plodder. But what do you reckon? Do you think this idea that the internet, you know, it's just really hard to learn some stuff, isn't it?
If you look at the sheer magnitude of data that's available historically, right? Like you could go back to before the printing press, and it was in the hands of the clerics and the people with, like, you know, control. You have to be special to read this thing called a book that was written on parchment. Well, now we've got the opposite problem. Now we have a world where unlimited knowledge is available to anybody, but now that puts extra pressure on those that were not originally inclined to look for answers for themselves anyway. I see this in my own, like, niche of the world, where somebody goes on Google into a Facebook group or whatever it is and posts in a forum a question like, how can I find out where the best restaurant is in my neighborhood? And I'm like, for F's sake, you could have just typed that into Google and saved the whole trip. But, like, something is not in some people's heads. Let me Google that for you. Like, literally, as an entrepreneur, the exciting thing every day that makes me get out of bed is how many people are either unwilling or unable to actually do this thing for themselves. And so you can then charge them money to spoon feed them out of the baby food jar. and they seem gratified. And it's not a criticism of their humanity or their personality or if they're good people. It's that you are so ridiculously lazy that you don't realize it. And I'm going to take full advantage of it in a, nice way, because like, come on. And that's where I see the state of the world. The greater amount of knowledge there is, and then with AI coming in, we're going to have like that Disney movie. Remember that one where like, I think it was Wall-E or something, where everybody on the planet
Wall-E
had to move to space, and they were all transported around till they became just like huge and immobile. And it's like the lazier people get, the lazier the world gets. But the people who are willing to do stuff, they're going to control it.
So you think it's a motivation problem?
It's a demotivation. The greater amount of knowledge there is, the more people go like, oh, I can't even be bothered to get started, which is really weird and scary. And I see that in some cases with my kids in their school, because like they've taken away certain things like handwriting. They don't teach handwriting in grade school anymore. So my kids, even my teenagers, when they want to sign a document, it looks like a ransom note.
Well, mine, because I've got dyslexia, mine's always looked at it. I always,
yes, I mean it's interesting, because if you don't teach cursive, then how do you end up with a signature that looks like a signature, and is distinguishable from block print? And
mine's distinguishable. It's just not readable.
Oh, well, that's all right. It just means people will think you're a doctor.
Yeah, that's what.
And
Dr. Denwood. I like the sound of that.
Yes, I remember my GP in Britain telling me that like as soon as she became a GP, her handwriting became illegible. But then they hand wrote a lot of medical stuff back in the 90s.
It's true though. It's American doctors. I've seen the notes. You can't how you get the right drugs and treatment. I should never know.
I think they have to teach them the code. But I mean, I think this is part of the way our education system works or fails to work in this country. There does seem to be an expectation that education is like, you drill a hole in my brain and you like take a funnel and you drop knowledge in it, and that isn't the way that it works. But I also think, and one thing that the article points out is that even people for whom a subject isn't easy can learn it, and there are techniques that help you to study better and to learn better, and that's part of what all the people who do tutoring and test training and blah 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 are about, is finding ways to help people not only master the material of a particular class and pass a test, but actually know how to learn new stuff and practice it, and practice is usual. And the author of this post is selling a course now on CSS for JavaScript developers, which is probably hilarious. But he makes a good point that there is a combination of, well, if you take a class, it will make sure you cover some basics that you might not uncover just doing this sort of trial and error googly thing, which is, how I learned most of my code. But if you only take the class, you won't necessarily be up against the different kinds of real world scenarios that might happen, where like, oh, okay, so this tutorial you wrote, it worked great in the environment that you wrote it on, but like, what if it's a different PHP version or a different server, or it's interacting with some theme or other?
Yeah, I put this to Vito. I think because being a dyslexic and going through the UK education system in the 60s, to say that I was a pariah and hated by my teachers in the education system would be an understatement. The actual visual hatred of me was considerable. Always puzzled me, but what's the link? I think one of the things you get as a dyslexic, you get very used to failure, and you learn how to cope with it, and you learn you've got to keep on trying. But there's also, as a musician, you're an excellent musician, but to be a really good musician, yeah, you got to practice and you got to be determined, but you also got to have an inclination. Or do you? I'll be interested in what your thoughts about that are.
So I think that I love learning, and I didn't in school. So like my entire high school was go to school so that my parents think I go to school. As soon as they leave to work, I came back and played the guitar until it was dark outside. So that was my high school, and I spent the 12 hours a day learning this craft. You know, like just figuring out how to be a musician, how to play, and how to kind of get the instrument speak for what I wanted to say, and that kind of taught me a lot of things because my parents weren't into it at all. They were both that had like military careers, so having a musician as a kid was a no-go. So I had to find the information myself, and that meant that if I did go to school, it was to go to the library and copy a lot of the stuff that I could find from my friends that did go to music lessons, because I didn't go, and to figure it out myself and to just watch MTV and look at their hands and see all those kind of stuff back before there was internet and this kind of stuff. And that's how I learned to code as well, from the same room that I was playing the guitar as a teenager. Just kind of like figuring it out and trying to see what's going on. But then I realized the value of learning what you like, because when I did that, I became really good at it, because I enjoyed it. I was doing it with passion. I think that's one of the things that is really lacking when you choose a topic to learn. You just want to do it because you need to do it, or you just kind of was told that you got to know this thing. But unless you want to know it, you're not gonna. So that's really, I think, is the key of how I try to look at this. And I don't try to feed myself information just out of the blue. I learned stuff every single day, and I have an hour and a half dedicated every day to learn something. And I read books, and I take courses. I always in courses. Andrew knows that I'm in coaching sessions. We had a really good session today about this stuff. But an hour and a half every single day is dedicated to this, and I just learn what I need right now. And so I don't know what I need to know next year. I know what I need to learn yesterday, and that's what I'm learning today. And that's how I've kind of like gone about it, because I really truly believe, and it came from the music aspect, that passion is the driver of learning.
So right, I want to go on to our recommendations, because obviously I want to keep this around an hour, and then I hope that Stephanie can stay on for bonus, because I want to hear her impression of Elizabeth Holmes, which cracks me up. But thanks for that. So we're going to go on to our recommendations of the week. My one is, look, if you've got clients or you've got a load of domains yourself, or you're looking to buy some domains, go and register them with Cloudflare, folks. It's cheap. They're nice people to do business with. Don't use some company that's got daddy in it. Do yourself a favor and do your clients a favor, and don't go to some of these other seedy domain providers, because when anything goes wrong or you need to get hold of them or anything, it's a freaking nightmare. Use a nice company. Go to Cloudflare, for God's sake.
They're going to be our sponsors next week.
Well, no, I don't think so. I'll be very happy if they became our main sponsors. I think they're just a nice people to do business with. So sorry, Sally. Sally.
Oh, no, I have nothing against that. It's just, if you really like a company, it makes sense for to talk to them at some point about sponsorship, because you have a completely honest endorsement.
Have you found them not nice people to do business with?
I've only used Cloudflare for the CDN kind of stuff, and I've never actually really done business with them. I've been happy enough with the service.
Yeah, I've dealt with them, and you get your questions answered quickly. They don't try and upsell you endlessly, and they don't.
Anybody who isn't doing the constant upsell gets a thumbs
And they
up.
don't gouge you. So to me, they get 5 stars.
They gave the office space to WP London, I think, Vito, didn't they? You know, they gave the office space, and they're very nice people, and I like Cloudflare. So there you go.
There we go. So, Sally, who's your recommendation of the week?
I would like to recommend a tool called Visual Sitemaps, which is at visualsitemaps.com. And what you do is you give it a URL, which can be either like the main URL for a website, or it can be your XML sitemap. And it creates an org chart, basically, of your website structure.
With visual sitemap.
Yes, with little screenshots of each page, which is kind of an extra cuteness. But I like using, mind mapping for organizing things. And this is really handy because you can see how, what is the structure, and indeed, is there any structure to a site you might be starting to work on? How might you want to rearrange it? You can then
we need to
rearrange it there. So yes, and there's a deal at AppSumo.
Oh, great. Stephanie, what's your recommendation? And Uncle Spencer, put them in Slack, and Uncle Spencer will organize them for me.
Mine's in Slack. I'm recommending perfectrecall.app today. It's you can upload your recorded Zooms, or you can have it be added as a member of the meeting. It'll automatically record and transcribe, and then you can just highlight the text to chop it up into little mini videos.
Oh.
Really nice, really handy, and free. There's a generous free level anyhow.
Oh, right.
Really,
look at that.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Nice.
Vito, have you got a recommendation for the tribe?
I'm going to recommend a book to continue on what we were talking about before.
Good idea.
There's a book that I just finished.
What are those?
The way I do it is I buy I listen to it, and pretty much by chapter 2 or 3, if I really enjoy it, then I also order the physical version and just do it together. Just read together. So one that I was expecting like a book, but I got like this, which is massive thing.
Wow.
But this book called $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy, I think is pronounced. And this is just an awesome book. Just a great way to open our minds. If we're building websites, if we have products, if we're working with clients, to just really understand positioning and even if we want to kind of understand how to price ourselves compared to the ecosystem around us. Loads of golden nuggets in this one. So $100 Million Offers is the name of the book.
Oh, great. Thanks for that. John, have you got a recommendation for the tribe, John?
My recommendation comes from the iPullRank website, and this is people supporting SEOs. This is a list of SEO people that you might not have heard of, mostly non-white guys, so women, people of color, people from underrepresented groups. But the unique thing about this list is
any English people?
I don't know, probably. But the unique thing about this list is each one of these people was nominated by someone in the SEO community, and each of the listings here is accompanied by a video of the person who nominated them extolling their virtues and like why they nominated them and why you should follow their work.
Okay.
So,
Thank
good
you
list.
for that. Andrew, have you got a recommendation for the tribe, Andrew?
Yeah. There's a friend of mine. Well, I've known Ben, right, but he's at Ben Wrights on Twitter. He's kind of off the planet sometimes, and message him and say, really, you know, a bit like you, Jonathan, to be honest. But he started WPHunts.com. You got to be careful how you say that. And but it's product hunt basically for WP products and for the smaller product guy. You know, like we were talking at the top of the show. You know, Geo Shop or, you know, smaller product owners and stuff like that. Sometimes they need a bit of help, and I think he's really got the altruistic thing going with WP Hunts and wants to help the smaller plugin developers or makers of the web promote themselves and have genuine best ofs rather than, you know, best ofs because they've got the best affiliate program or whatever it is. So, you know, I think you know, give Ben a support, sign up to the newsletter, and I think it will be ready in a few weeks' time. But he's prolific on starting things, but, you know, let's hope with this one stays going. And he's an expert marketing manager. I mean, I met him 20 years ago when I was selling CDs. He was working as a marketing manager for a CD company. But yeah, WPHunts.com.
That's great. We're going to continue the discussion in bonus content, which you've got some great stories. Got a story about Elizabeth Holmes. We've got a story about Divi. We've got some great stories that you can watch in the bonus content. You can watch that on the WP-Tonic Facebook group page or on the WP-Tonic, well, next week on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Or the podcast part of the show. But if you want to see all the juicy extra content, you need to join us on the WP-Tonic Facebook group page. I'm going to let the panel quickly tell you how you can find out more about them, and then we'll be going into bonus content. Sally, how can people find out more about you?
I am at Sally Getch or at WP Fangirl in almost every network and etc. And I have a website called WPFangirl.com, but I haven't done very much with it lately because, you know, those pesky clients.
Yeah, Sam, there we go. Stephanie, how can people find out more about your words of wisdom?
You can check out focuswp.co or come hang out with me in my Facebook group, Focus on Your Biz, B-I-Z.
And before I ask Vito, I just want to say that if you don't know, folks, Vito is an extremely accomplished musician. I'm not an expert, but I've seen him play and just amazing. Vito, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
So come join our Facebook group at Atarim for agencies and freelancers. That's a great place to share ideas and to speed up your workflow. Then also you can join our Facebook group for Bertha AI if you're creating content for your websites, if you have courses, or if you have like a shop, and every place where you need to generate content at scale. Bertha is your best friend. So this is a brand new place where Andrew and I are hanging out in a lot. And finally, come to and follow me on Twitter, Vito Peleg.
And they're both those products are supporters and sponsors of the WP-Tonic show. And thank you so much for showing your support for the WP tribe. It's much appreciated, Vito. Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
WPLaunchify.com or at launchflows.com. And we're actually going to start, I think officially today, we're going to do a co-venture with Bertha, because Launchflows lets you make great sales funnels.
Whoa.
And Bertha lets you generate great sales copy, peanut butter and chocolate. And the sale is called Double Trouble. And I'll post the link
Double
here.
Deputy. I think you should call it Double Deputy.
It's lifetime Launchflows, a lifetime double cap limit of words for your free Bertha account. So 10,000 words a month, which means you'd be out of your mind not to pay the $219 to get both of those things into your toolkit for yourself and for your clients. And again, it'll be on the homepage, but if you do launchflows.com/2x for Double Trouble.
All right, there we go. John, how can people find out more about you?
My website, lockdownseo.com. That's lock with the E at the end, Lockdown SEO. You can also find me on Twitter, lockdown_. And then my YouTube channel, just search for John Locke SEO and you will find it.
And Andrew Palmer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to, Andrew?
Well, you can go to thisisandrewpalmer.com to find out the investments I've made. One of them is wahi.io as well, which again was with Vito. So we've got that going on as well. And you can go to Web Ace Tech's Facebook group, and that's our support group for plugins help and support. And obviously Vito's mentioned Bertha Facebook group as well. So we've got a lot going on. You can get in touch with us anywhere, but on Twitter, I'm at Arnie Palmer, and that's it.
Yes. We're wrapping it up now, folks. Remember to go over to the WP-Tonic Facebook page, group page, and you'll be able to watch the bonus content. You'll be able to watch Stephanie's impression of Elizabeth Holmes that I'm looking forward to. We'll see you next week, folks, for another great show, another great discussion. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, panel. Those that want to leave can leave, and then we'll go straight in. And hopefully Stephanie can stay on for a little while. Hopefully, Stephanie.
Yes, I can stay.
Sorry to miss it, guys. I gotta head and.
All right, off we go. God, that just cracks me up. That does. Let's go straight into it.
You're muted, Andrew. What did you say?
Just cracks me up. I'm such a child. I know. I'm such an idiot.
Did you just kick her before she said goodbye? You rotten sod.
I'm such an idiot, but I love it. Let's go straight into it. Diffie working on a secret Gutenberg block builder project. So, Stephanie, a big person in the Diffie community, what did you think of this piece?
I mean, I don't know. Elliot Thieves has always put general WordPress content up, so I don't think it necessarily means anything just because they've got a bunch of stuff in their blog. But there is some potential there.
I think it
There's
does.
some potential there, though. There's, I mean, they're just getting traffic too, right? There's a big SEO component of if you're not searching for Divi, you're searching for Goot, but then you end up thinking like, oh, maybe I can try this page builder. But I think that there is a possibility. I think if Nick is smart, and he is a smart guy, I think he'll probably find some way to link in. I've heard him say little hints about things where, that like if you could design your blocks with the Divi builder, or, use blocks in the Divi, either way, I mean, you'd be dumb to ignore it right now. I mean, Gutenberg's the future. So
Uncle Spencer, what do you think? I think they've got to be planning something. Otherwise, they've got a steady business, but in the near future, it's going to be a slowly dying business. So they've got to be up to something, haven't they?
Well, I enjoyed Jamie's video, and he's very well spoken on this. And the idea is he had like 5 potential reasons, 4 of which he guessed at. One was like, what's your thought? And my thought is probably closer to the one thing he recommended, which was, so Nick and his team have standing with a huge audience of existing customers. You can ignore the storm that you see coming at your boat and pretend it doesn't exist and hide your head in the cabin, but that's not going to stop it from coming. And I think what they're doing is they're making content like the story I talked about earlier with Syed. They have the foresight to see the future, and they acknowledge this Gutenberg thing is a major problem. Everybody turns on WordPress and there it is. So how are we going to get around it? By pretending it doesn't exist, arguing against it, fighting about it, debating it, or embracing it, and making sure enough people get directed to our website to go, oh, maybe I should add this Divi thing on too. And I think that's the answer, is that they understand they've got an audience they have to appease. They might as well get through this earlier than later, instead of pretending it doesn't exist and then having to deal with, the house is on fire.
Right. What do you reckon, Andrew? And Andrew, I just got to pop out around the corner for 1 minute. So, Andrew, can you?
I've got a whole minute. Woohoo!
There you go. Off you go.
Right. So
Off you go.
I believe Jamie. I think because Nick is always talking about getting rid of short codes in Divi. There's only one reason for doing that, is that's to go HTML or the Elementor way, and making blocks and everything. And I have actually got a product which we'll launch at the end of this month called Gutenberg.ai, which isn't, the site's not up yet, but we've done it with Elementor. We can now convert Elementor pages into Gutenberg blocks. So a couple more experiments of that, and Divi's on the roadmap. And Divi, we're kind of halfway there with Divi. And it's always been my intention with Page Builder Cloud was to be able to upload an Elementor or a Divi or a Page Builder layout and then re-import that into Gutenberg blocks. And I'm lucky enough to know quite a few developers, and I've JV'd with a developer, and we've got, I think Spence, you might have even seen part of it, but we can now pretty much 99% convert an Elementor layout into Gutenberg blocks on the fly, which is really cool. So I think Divi are gonna do that kind of thing. If you want to build your page in Divi, just like Jamie says, Oxygen do it already. I think with a third-party add-on, I don't know, but you will be able to convert it into Gutenberg because it'll be easier for the customer. It'll be less confusing because Gutenberg is omnipresent, right? You can't turn off that welcome to Gutenberg pop-up without turning it off Gutenberg.
Well, that's the Oxygen thing. He referred to Oxygen, and I have, we all know I have first-person experience with Oxygen. So
just a little bit.
This week I had to demonstrate, but the metaphor of Oxygen is odd. But I would say that there's some merit to the argument that they're saying, look, you can work in your comfortable environment of Divi, and then it will make it into a block. So it becomes that conversion tool that we talked about. Now, that's a theory that holds water as well, because even though you have to embrace the blocks, you're doing it on your own terms, which for many of the fanboys and girls would be a sufficient way to doing it. I'll just build in Divi and take 14 seconds to load the builder and then make it a block where it loads immediately. Wink, wink. But the problem still remains, which is I addressed this week. I don't care of Oxygen or Divi or this. I don't care what you use. But when you open up the goddamn native builder, it takes 2 to 3 seconds to load and to save and to move on. When you open up another page builder, I did an objective recording. Divi in the classic mode took 16 to 18 seconds to save a page on the admin side. And I'm like, you can't work like that. You just can't do it.
You would be thankful that's quick, mate.
I've never experienced that problem.
I identify the fact that when I did it, it was a use case for a client. It was with the classic builder. When I moved to the front end, it took like the same 3 to 5 seconds. But just the fact that there's like another layer there gets revealed under those circumstances where I'm like, what is the objective reason? If I was starting from scratch, I would choose Divi over something else. And right now I find it a harder and harder proposition. I'm not saying that the legacy people don't have a vested reason to stay with Divi, especially with their clients, but I'm saying like, new tool, new way of doing stuff,
Yeah, sure. So, Vito, what do you reckon?
I actually am distracted here and I need to go. So,
then I'll see you later then. All right.
See you, V.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye.
So, John,
Bye, mate.
He was getting bored, wasn't he, folks? He was getting. He was going to nod off.
He's got loads. I got to tell you, he's got loads to do. Yeah. So there you go. I know.
John, so what do you reckon about the?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that all the legacy page builders, if they don't already have a plan for converting people to blocks, probably should have that, because who knows what's on the WordPress core roadmap. So I think that that's the smoothest way, is to keep people within their comfortable workflow and then let them convert their pages to blocks, because that's the big issue. If you have your whole site and it's got a bunch of pages that are built in Divi or Elementor or Beaver Builder or whatever.
The only one I think that might differ is Elementor, because I do honestly think
they're going to fork.
And
they should fork. They should go head to head, and Automatic fears them doing that. It's obvious that they think that they're going to do that.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I might be wrong. Right, let's go to my highlight of the week. Was Elizabeth Holmes like Steve Jobs? Her emails say no. I'm going to leave my personal rants about Elizabeth to my newsletter video, but I'm interested.
So Spencer doesn't leave.
We're in a no misogyny zone, please. Thank you.
Yeah, but I've probably Spencer and I keep my word, or I try to. But Stephanie, what? How do you think? I don't think the trial's going too well for Elizabeth. And what did you think of this particular piece?
I don't know. I mean,
oh, please do it in her accent.
It's too much. It's too much.
Go on, please. Let's have a sample, please.
Just you're so crazy. She thinks she's Steve Jobs, but I'm not sure anybody else does. Just these people kicking her, like kissing her butt, might say like they. I don't know, like why they even pulled this up. Why is this even in court? Why is that even mentioned that she's like Steve Jobs? Like that's just stupid. It's so irrelevant to anything. And somebody thought that Theranos was going to be the next Apple, and that's why they joined her. And I'm like, a medical company is not going to be the same as a technology, like as a computer company and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know. It's all just dumb. She wanted to be Steve Jobs bad. She dressed like him. She tried to talk like him. She tried, all those things. She tried to just be a domineering, kind of nasty person, but clearly she isn't.
All right. Well, I'm not going to pass any. I'm going to put it over to Spencer, who has legal knowledge. How do you reckon the trial's going? I don't, in my naive, non-expert, I sense it's not going too well for her.
It's not going to end well for her either way. I mean, let's be honest, because it's like this kind of stuff sticks to you. And not in a Notorious B.I.G. kind of way, like it's.
Well, she's not exactly rough in it, is she? Though she's found her lifestyle, which yeah, I'm not going to comment on it. So, but what do you think? But I suppose you are right. It's not going to end great for her either way, is it?
The problem for her is that the damage is already really done. Now it's just an issue of how bad is the penalty going to be. The antics of her attorney may succeed. We've seen varying degrees of that. I referred to in previous conversations about the difference between the trial of Felicity Huffman for the school payoff scandal versus Lori Loughlin and her husband Massimo. And Felicity Huffman and her husband took a very contrite, like, we're really sorry, bowed their head, kissed the ring. They got a relative, she and I don't think he was responsible. He's the other actor, but he didn't get charged, but she did. She got a relatively light sentence. Yeah. Lori Loughlin and Massimo stretched it out, landed in the, oh man, I landed on the wrong square Monopoly COVID sentence to go to jail. And I think she did like an extremely long sentence relative to what it would have been had she been contrite. So here, there's no way for her to buy her way out of it, but the strategy her lawyers are betting on is kind of Hail Mary pass. Like, I'm going to go on the offensive. I'm going to be aggressive, try to get this turned into whatever. Maybe she'll get acquitted, or maybe the sentence will be minor or whatever. But she's definitely going to have trouble getting a job in this town again.
That's interesting. Before I put it over, let's say, to John. So you think, and I agree with you, I think she would have been wiser to been a little bit more apologetic, blah, blah, blah. But they must have discussed all this. You got any insight why they didn't decide to do what I think you're suggesting that they should have done?
They could have made a deal, but remember, look at the WeWork guy. The reason he hasn't been prosecuted or his fast spending yoga loving wife is because the guy who lent him the money has refused to press charges. It's all like the legal system is atrocious. The police system is atrocious. The world we live in right now, in many ways, is beautiful, but atrocious. We're seeing what's happening in South Africa. We're seeing what's happening in Great Britain with the fuel shortages. Like, people don't act rationally, and the laws and rules of government are not rational. They are arbitrary and capricious depending on who you are, where you are, what color you are, how much money you have. And she is basically in the casino of life, gambling on the strategy of how she can get to the next thing. But the truth is, she could have just pled insanity. I mean, it's not a legal defense, but she could have pled that she was nuts, lost her mind, had a wandering uterus or something, you know. Like, she could play the same game she played to get where she's at, but she's chosen this strategy, and then you're going to see how it pans out. And honestly, I don't think it's fine for us to talk about the story, but like, I don't find her behavior or her actions even in the same universe of a Steve Jobs. I mean, she's like, you know, a character actor compared to the real deal.
Yeah, it's just like, what fascinates me about, just to finish, well, let's put it over to John. So, John, how do you reckon things are going for the Blessed Elizabeth? I got the feeling they're not going too well.
You know, I hate to say this, but she'll probably get a light sentence, and then she'll probably be right back. And that's the way it goes. And check it out. Her dad was a vice president at Enron. Her parents are connected in Washington, D.C. VCs give money to people that are like them, and most of VCs are, you know, mediocre white people who just happen to get lucky, and they give it to other grifting people like the WeWork guy or, you know, Elizabeth Holmes, and she'll probably get a light sentence. She'll probably get like a Martha Stewart sentence, and then she'll be right back to living her life. And
so,
meanwhile,
so Andrew, I think John's made a good point. Andrew, I found that it's like water with these type of people from this certain. It's like water on a duck's back. It's a bit like the Prime Minister of the UK. Nothing ever sticks, and when it does stick, they're just on to the next things that would destroy our lives. We'd just be thrown to the lions. It's just water on the duck's back, on to the next thing.
Isn't that the general attitude of the human race, though? Because these people, what happens with them? And, you know, Spence alluded to the people that kind of fiddled their way into college in the US, and you have to sometimes because, you know, what college you went to is important. Even in the Marvel films, you know, when he says, "Did you go to?"
Well, I've got to say, some of the worst idiots I've ever had the misfortune of dealing with came from Ivy League or Oxford or Cambridge.
Well, no, very successful people. I mean, the founders of NTL, which is now Virgin Media in the UK, you know, they were all Harvard. Every single director was a white guy and from Harvard. You know, so it's just the way it happens. These people are connected. You know, most of our parliament is made up of Oxbridge people, Eton educated, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's just who you know, not what you know. But the point is that these people become celebrities. You know, through this case, this person is a celebrity. Other people, you know, some people will want her to go to jail for a long, long time. Some people
it'll be the book deal, won't it? She'll have the book deal and the speaking
but the people that lost the money. People that lost the money are idiots as well, you know. So, you know, if something is too good to be true, sounds too good to be true, it generally is. And, you know, there's that saying, you know, a fool in his money. And the people that invested in it got fooled, and they were fools and they had money. Serves them right. I don't care.
Right.
I really don't care.
On to the last story. And I'm going to really stop myself from ranting. Facebook Inc. new employee manual. Professor Galloway, which I do enjoy, to say he hasn't minced his words would be under. John, what do you? Because you like Professor Galloway as well. He certainly didn't mince his words in this piece, did he?
Well, Facebook is the evil scourge, and Mark Zuckerberg is pretty much almost single-handed, not single-handedly, but it would have happened anyway, but he definitely accelerated a lot of the ills that have gone on in our society with pushing conspiracy theories and allowing all kinds of things to flourish. Everything, you know, in Facebook is just covering the ass of the executive team, Zuckerberg and the rest of the leadership. That's it. I mean, they don't care as long as they make enough money to fly to Mars with the rest of the billionaires. So
Well, you got to get the money so you can fly to Mars. It's the
That's
it's
right.
the in thing, isn't it? These, maybe they know something we don't. Stephanie, do you think that it was Professor Gallagher? I don't know if you're a fan of his stuff. I like some of it. To say that he didn't mince his words in this piece would be a slight understatement, wouldn't it?
I have a confession. I didn't make it to this article.
All right.
So sorry.
All right. Spencer, what do you reckon? He certainly didn't mince his words, did he?
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, I'm going to generalize my response to this. It's like there was some other news announcement somewhere about what Facebook's former employees said here and there, and so for the motive. Like, do we really even debate what the motives are of people in this territory? I mean, when you talk about Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg or any of these people, I mean, we're living in a world where, like, as we discussed today, there's things going on that are like 30-year-old news that are repeating themselves, 40-year-old news even, right? It's like 1968 again in 2020. And I just find it interesting that, like, human behavior is so cyclical and repetitive. It's like we're all playing in a performance of Shakespeare that just keeps going on endlessly. You just replace the actors. So none of this surprises me, but I do feel that we're ramping up towards, obviously, some great changes in our society and on our planet. And I think the question becomes, do the normal people, the day-to-day people, on a one-to-one basis, start to change the way we interact with each other directly, instead of giving our power to the government or to the social media companies or to the news reporter or any of those people? Because I think that's the root of the issue. As I talked about earlier, I feel most people are too lazy or stupid to think for themselves. But when you're faced with these predicaments that we all have, what choice is left? I mean, you can't rely on your government to treat you fairly. You can't rely on the institutions to treat you fairly. You can only rely on each other. We can only get back to that level of, like, two people tell two people, tell two people, tell two people. And I think that's what this is
before
about.
I put it over to Andrew, the one aspect of this that interests me, Spencer, is that, and I'm no expert. I am having Dr. Sherry Rowland on the show from the Zen podcast, and we will be delving into this, Spencer. Is that I really do think Mark and also Bezos, they both, to me, have signs of high functioning autism in their personality mix. And I really don't think they understand how they come across. And it
doesn't matter.
I think it's the way, because obviously I have dyslexia, and I think a lot of people in the IT industry have some level of high functioning autism, and how spectrum conditions affect society. I think it's an area that's fascinated me, actually, Spencer. So, Andrew, I was shocked by just the language that Professor, it was just not really the content, it was just the language utilized about Mark's, the language.
What, calling him a sociopath?
Yeah.
And comparing it to Fleabag. And if you haven't ever watched Fleabag, watch it, because you'll see the actress, and she's phenomenal she's a total sociopath as well. So that kind of, and you should really look at the definition of what a sociopath is. And he's not wrong, right? Because it's difficult to understand, especially now, when Zuckerberg is obviously a billionaire. It's difficult to understand what drives a billionaire to actually continue being the head of a business. It's really difficult because, I'm inherently lazy. That's my kryptonite. Is honestly, I'm inherently lazy. I like to do nothing. I love it. I play golf. I'd like to do nothing. I can literally do nothing. And if I
can't do that. I've got to be doing.
Well, no,
something.
If I had 10% of what they've got, you wouldn't be seeing me. I'd say, "Tell our guys, yeah, thanks, nice to see you. I might send you a donation occasionally." But I don't
keep
understand
the show, though, Andrew.
Yeah, I still carry on doing that. But the point is that
let's hope Spencer thinks
I don't understand their motivation continuing to do this, particularly when you have to sit in front of a Senate. I mean, he refused to sit in front of our Parliament, the UK Parliament, and said, "Fine."
You're not even.
Well,
on
no,
the
but you
radar,
know, there's no. We can't compel people to sit in front of the Parliament. As far as I understand, you can compel people to sit in front of the
Well,
Senate.
he isn't
right?
a UK, yeah, but in all fairness,
No,
he's
he's got
not
a UK business. I mean, and Ireland. You know, Facebook is in London. It's got big offices. It's a big employer, and that is the problem. Is that these people employ a phenomenal amount of people. So governments are reticent to chastise them as much as they do. Yes, they fine them a couple of billion.
I'm going to
who
say
cares?
to wrap this up, panel, and thanks. I think it's been a great show, but I'm actually more critical of the executive team underneath Mark than him, because I honestly feel, and I might be totally wrong because I'm just a lay person, I think there are some factors in his personality, and I've mentioned it already to you, panel, that I think affects his behavior. I am actually much more critical of the people that are in the executive team because their behavior and is outrageous. I mean, the Facebook, the documentation that's come out about their attitude and how they run their business is not surprising. A bit like what Spencer says. Why we're surprised, I don't really know, but you know, he is right. It does seem to keep repeating. But there we go.
Look to the history. Look to Standard Oil, like John Paul Getty, or look to Andrew Carnegie, or look to Julius Caesar, or something. I mean, people who have been wealthy or in charge have always been insane in their own way, whether it's autistic or whether it's just because power corrupts them. I mean, you can't get to that status. You could be born into it, but you can't be in that status without going insane, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. You take a small child and you raise them in an environment where you teach them to be generous and kind and everybody's the same. That's a normal person. You take a child and you make them pampered and explain to them how everybody's below you and all the rest of the stuff, and they can buy their way out of any problem because mommy or daddy will help, and they become a monster.
Well, that sounds the typical British public school.
But that happens.
Right.
That happens in animals and people. You know,
I've got to go, and
Me
Stefan's
too.
got to go as well.
All right,
I've got to
Bye,
go
you
again. I
guys.
understand
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's
like,
fun.
we're gonna wrap the show up,
later.
folks. We're wrapping the
Feel
show
better,
up,
Andrew.
folks.
Yeah,
and
feel
See ya.
better,
Thanks.
Bye,
Happy
Steph.
birthday, John. Bye.
If you
Yeah.
let me finish, folks, we're wrapping the show. we're wrapping the show up, folks, and we'll see you next week. The panel have made the decision. We'll see you soon, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys. Bye.
Bye.
Do you want to stay on for a second, Spencer? There you go.
Sure.
So I'm sorry about the miss. I would like
Is the
you
show
to start.
over?
Yeah, I've got to end it. All right.